Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the Cake Radio Show. I'm the CakeDive, and I hope you guys are doing super well. I'm gonna hop in and talk about this teacher that has been going on. They've been going viral on TikTok and on Twitter because they got their braids taken out by a bunch of kids, and a lot of people have discourse on that. And I wanted to speak on it as well as talk about the use of children in like TikToks with teachers and sort of my thoughts on those. So I'm not going to attach the video of the teacher here, largely because it features the faces of these kids, unfiltered and uncensored. And also because this is a podcast, there is no the I question how much the visuals would really help. I think it probably would get me copyrighted. But you can look it up. You could just type in like teacher braids, teacher getting braids taken out. Then it'll probably be the first thing that pops up. And a lot of people, well, first there was a discussion of the video in itself and the different sort of takes with that. I've seen a lot of people try to make this a thing that it's not and say that, oh, like these kids, because the kids that were taking the braids out were girls. They were saying that, oh, like these girls are fast, like they ain't trying to do this because they trying to get close. They find a teacher, attractive, whatever, da 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 da. And I don't think that's the case, and I think that does engage in a little bit of misogynoir, because of the fact that it seems to unfortunately be a thing with, black people in which, when it comes to black women and black girls, they are not given the grace that, they're not given the grace that other girls or like men are given. And like any little thing can be viewed as them being fast, quote unquote. And I don't believe that for a second. Y'all not letting these girls be girls, and that is it's really unfortunate. Because I think with this video there's nothing inherently here suggesting that that's the case. So those who are trying to suggest that, I think, are either projecting or their misogynoir is coming out. That being said, that teacher shouldn't have had them kids taking them braids out. I think that's just the thing. I think the issue is, one, the fact that the teacher really shouldn't have had them kids taking them braids out. Like, he could have gotten somebody else to do it, and he could be teaching. I don't know if this. I'm assuming this was probably in like lunch, because I have stories, and a few other people have had stories in which it's like, oh, like you get close to a teacher, and y'all chilling at lunch together, like you sit in a classroom for lunch, and you having a kiki, y'all talking the game and having a good time because y'all are chill like that. But there's still the level of like respect and stuff that occurs between teacher and student. Those roles are still present. And so there's that conversation, and then there's also the conversation of teachers using kids for content and the questionability of that. By the way, I think allegedly the teacher got fired, because there was also another video that went around in which it shows a kid say like, oh, like it's like a kid sitting in like a bathroom, and it says like, oh, I only F with, emo boys, and it cuts to the teacher like, topless with like an emo TikTok filter on, and people are saying that video is the reason why the teacher was fired. I'm inclined to believe that, well, the video is on his TikTok still, and it's from like 2 years ago, so it's been there for a minute, and it's like, it's a skit. And the thing about that is, that's the crazy thing in itself, and I would be inclined to believe that probably got unfired. Well, okay, I think they probably found that video and they was like, okay, well, now we gotta let you go because this is crazy. because there's no way, the way that the video is framed, and again, you could probably look that up because it's on Twitter, there is no way that he could have been mistaken that was not a minor. So him participating in that skit was like crazy on another level. And that is another conversation to be had about, you know, what his intentions were of that. This gets really murky. Like, this gets really murky. And that video, as well as the video of him getting his braids taken out, definitely brought a lot of unneeded, you know, the school probably saw it, well, the school saw it as unneeded attention towards him and the students. And there's also, again, it goes to the conversation of having these kids appear in these videos with or without consent, and the ethics of that. So they gave, you know, with schools, majority of schools have, you know, guidelines in place saying that, oh, like, if there is, and I know, and I'm blanking on if this is a whole, like, a thing that happens at all schools. I know not a lot of schools. Okay, some schools do this. I know when I was growing up, I had schools do this, but there are literally like consent forms that are given out to students and teachers. Well, not students and teachers. Students and parents that would say, "Oh, we, like, in the case of us using, like, that would grant it would be like a consent form granting the school to use the, like, footage of, or like photos of your child in, you know, their media. It will grant them the consent, and the parent would have to sign and say yes or no, and the student can sign as well, and they could at any time remove that consent form if they need be. So, but that's from the school perspective. That's from an administrative perspective. Like, oh, from the official brand channels of these schools, this is what we do. And there isn't anything baked in regarding teachers, staff using TikToks and staff using social media and using kids, you know, in these platforms. So I would say the braid video is concerning only because of the fact that, like, okay, not even concerned. The braid video is bad only because of the fact that, like, he shouldn't have had them kids taking his braids out. Like, he could have got that done on his own time. As well as the fact that he, you know, displayed the faces of these kids for the TikTok. And the emo video is gross and really unfortunate because there's no way that he did not know that that's a minor in that bathroom in the video that he stitched. Like, that is definitely crazy. So he got fired, you know, and there's that to it. And this also reminds me of the series of videos from that other teacher from, like, a different school who kept calling, like, his students, like, dumb and saying that, oh, like, they're, you know, reading at like fourth grade levels, like, they're so behind, and, like, berating these kids. And also using, like, videos of these kids and, like, showing them, like, answering questions wrong and him, like, being frustrated with that. And then people were criticizing him, you know, using these kids for content and, like, him berating these kids instead of actually teaching these kids. And him turning back and be like, whoa, da 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 da, like, y'all were not really mad at me, da da da, y'all should be mad at the parents, da 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 da. And he also a barb too, but that's not what we're talking about here. And both of those things kind of correlate to what I wanted to talk about in regards to the teachers on TikTok and the whole situation and, like, questionability of that. So the teachers want to be influencers, and that is not because, I don't think I think part of it is because some of them want to, but I think the underlying truth is because they have to. The issue with the American education system, and I'm specifying this as an American situation because we are not getting video. Like, this is very much an American issue. This is not something, we're not seeing videos of teachers in other countries, you know, using kids in content in the form that we're seeing it here in the States. And At least if it is, it's not hitting the timeline. It's not hitting the news like these videos are. So I would say that this is very much an American issue. And a lot of people, like a lot of these teachers are turning to TikTok. A lot of these teachers are turning to these platforms because they've seen how easy it is in theory to get clout, how easy it is to turn that clout into money, and how to build that following and use that for something. And I'd also like to clarify that there's a difference between the different types of teachers on TikTok. There's those teachers who are using TikTok as an educational platform. So there's those who are using it, and they may be in the classroom, but they're not using, or like they may, okay, let's break this down. So there's those who may be in the classroom, but they may be in their home, and they are discussing like educational content. So they're teaching the viewer, and kids usually are not a factor in these videos. They don't appear, and if they do appear, usually they are like blurred, they're censored, or like there's that type of ordeal. Then you have the skits, like the skits of like the teachers who do skits. And there's one teacher I actually follow. I'm blanking on her name, but I might link, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll probably link her account in the description because I actually love her content. She is someone who uses TikTok for skits, and she also uses it to promote her like DJ side hustle. So there's videos of her like in the classroom at her job at work as a teacher, but it is when there's no students around, no students are displayed in these videos, in the majority of her videos at least, and it's used like the videos are always skits in reference to her job as a teacher or her job like or her experiences with students, but the students are never displayed and the students aren't named. That's how you do a skit as a teacher. That is the safe route and the most like the smart way to do it. And then she also has her, DJ content in which like she goes on live and is doing her DJ stuff, or she's talking about her DJ stuff and her desire to be like a DJ and how that's also one of her jobs. And then you have the opposite side of that content in which the children are like utilized. And there is the issue that, there's the conversations of, oh, like, should these kids be featured? And the answer is no, because one, the kids do not have consent, and the kids also are not, like, the kids are not aware of what this content is until it hits TikTok or until it hits Twitter, until it hits the timeline. So when it comes to, like, stuff like that, one teacher who was berating these students saying, like, oh, like, they are behind learning wise, and basically like hazing these students in regards to how they are like behind, which is not the kids' fault. First of all, the issue with that is one, the teaching of the teachers, and two, the failures of the parents, because the parents I'll dig into this later, but because there's a reason to this. It all has a link. It all has a common link. And so you have stuff like that. And then you have the stuff like the teacher with the braids and the issues of that. These kids are being used for content, and they are not aware that they're being used for content like that. And it when it comes to stuff like the teacher who is berating students, there is like that will be very uncomfortable and very saddening to hear if you're a student, because you're going into this class with this teacher who very clearly thinks that you're not smart and is not giving you the proper materials and the proper they're not giving you what you need as a student to get to where you need to be, since you're behind. And therein lies the issue. But the teachers be using TikTok. The issue, they're using it as a side hustle, and they're using these kids they're exploiting these kids to use for this content because of the fact of them not being paid enough. Like, they're not being paid enough, and they also want the clout. the they're not being paid enough, and this is like a thing that is known. Like, it is known that American schools, especially public American schools, are severely underfunded. They're also understaffed, and the money is not reaching the teachers' pockets. They're hitting the administration, and then they're kicking a little bit of chump change to the teachers, and the teachers still gotta go do fundraisers. They gotta do different like events and stuff to try to like make sure they have like money. They also gotta keep like they also have to push the students to bring items in to help support the class. Like, I remember growing up, and when I remember for when I was in my school district, from like elementary school to middle school even, I remember it being a thing in which teachers would ask, like, oh, like, parents, make sure, like, when you, like, try bringing these items with your student to class, so, like, we could use this for the class, for the year. Or, like, they would assign students to bring certain items for class, and the items would be stuff like, oh, like, tissue paper, or, like, markers for, class. And I know it stopped happening in middle school, because when it came to middle school, it was like, okay, you should have these things on your own at this point, or like they would have it stored. But it's a thing to provide these items, because the school isn't bringing the teachers these items, and the teachers, some of the teachers are able to go forth and buy these things, but they still need the support, because again, they're not making a lot of money from this job. And there's that kind of issue that comes with it, and they're like, okay, where do I turn to generate extra cash while still doing this job, which they may or may not enjoy? Because in the case of something like the teacher with the braids, I would assume that he loved being a teacher, and that was a job that he enjoyed being in, for better or for worse. And then when it comes to the other teacher who is braiding these students, he's actually made it clear that this is a side job to him, and that this job clearly is not important to him in the regard that people would expect for a teacher to have a love for teaching. He's just doing this as a side job for the time being. So there's those kind of issues. And then, when it comes to that other teacher specifically who's braiding students, and people blaming the parents, yes, there's a fault that goes to the parents, because the parents, especially in the newer generations who are having kids, they should not be having kids right now. Like, that's the thing. Like, they should be at the club. Like, I think that there's this issue which, like, a lot of these parents who are coming up now are like, they're very clearly not ready to have kids. They are also trying to I guess they're not reprimanding the kids because they are, dealing from the trauma that their parents have given them in terms of reprimanding things. Like, oh, I'm not gonna reprimand my kids like this, or like, here's how you talk back, and the kids are talking back. The kids are not listening to teachers. Some kids, not all kids, but some kids, and we're seeing this discussion pop up on TikToks and stuff too. But there is, there's a reason for that. Oh, and the fact that these teachers are saying the kids are behind, the kids are reading the kids are reading below their grade reading level, and the issues with that. The biggest issue is the parents aren't having time, because they have to go to work all the time, and then they come home, and it's like, do they want to take care of this kid? No, they want to be in the club, or they want to sit down and relax because they're working all day at work. And then there's also the other handful of parents that don't care, they don't care, and that group of parents are always going to exist, and they've existed through each generation, so it's bound to happen. But we need to figure out how we can get the parents who do care for their kids, who do want to make sure that their kids are successful and are at a better place, and will be able to go to a better place in their lives than their parents were growing up. How can we get them to put in the work? And it's hard to do that because we're in a society that is making everyone work all day for pay that is not enough. And that trickles down to the teachers too, because they are not being paid enough, as I touched on earlier. They're not being paid enough, and they're turning to TikTok. And then they're using the kids. Some of them are using the kids. And they are aware that kids in content does sell, unfortunately. There are a lot of people who are willing to tune in. There's some who like tune in for like that content featuring kids, because there's that level of, in a sense, that level of joy that comes when seeing kids like interact with teachers in the classroom and that type of content. And then there's also like stuff like, oh, like when you're interacting with teenagers and stuff like that, what some of the teachers do. Like, it's nice hearing the, like, I guess some of the modern back and forth between, you know, teacher and student, and how like the students be giving the teacher some of the tea sometimes, like it'd be juicy. And then there's unfortunately the other side of that, in which there are people who are sick and are tuning in because there is that expectation, or they're looking to exploit the kids that are being visible in these videos. So therein lies, I guess, a lot of the issues. Now, where do we go from here? Now, for starters, I think that school administration, like, this is becoming a thing, and school administrations have to learn how to codify this, you know, because they can't prevent teachers from using social media, because that is just like impossible. Like, teachers are humans too. Just like Joe Smo, who is working a 9 to 5, teachers are want to tune into the latest TikTok. They want to tune into the latest tweets. Like, they engage and consume content like we consume content, you know. And so it would be impossible to try to crack down and say, oh, no teachers who are working at our school districts are allowed to have social media. Like, that's just impossible. I think that there should be some guidance as to, you know, reflect using children. Like, there should be a codified rule in these school districts saying, like, oh, like, you can be on social media, you can use content in our, like, sometimes you could even use content in our school if you make it clear that this is not from our school district, because again, you represent us. Or if you do use it, make sure you represent us in a positive light. They should also codify the fact that they should not use kids in this content, whether that's whatsoever, and you cannot use these kids, and these kids cannot be visible or appear or have their voices in these videos, or have it in which they are hidden so that you can hear their voice, but you do not visibly see these kids. And the happy medium, if we had to go, you know, make everybody happy, I guess the happy medium of this would be, you know, allowing teachers to, you know, make this content, for better or for worse, and I guess having the due diligence to, if they have to feature kids in the videos, make sure that they're censored, make sure that they are not visible to the video itself, to the audience, and also make sure that they're discussing these kids in positive light. Because when it comes to stuff like the teachers talking back about, like, okay, there's one thing about the teachers who are expressing concern. There's one thing about that, because that is one thing. But the teacher who is literally berating his students, that's another thing. There should be reprimandments regarding that. And that's really all there is to it. I think there's also, we could also talk about, I know earlier touched on the misogynoir of the braid situation, and, you know, where beauty can also fit in, I think, with the teachers that I brought up in this video, especially the male teachers. There is a level of, like, the beauty politics plays a role, unfortunately. Like, there is a lot of people who are, you know, critiquing or like thirsting over, they're in the defense of or they're thirsting over these two teachers because they are, fitting they're fitting a beauty standard. They're slim. They are conventionally attractive. They're conventionally attractive black men. So there is that sort of, air of the conversation that also has to be addressed. And I think if we were to flip how these teachers look, the conversations would be a lot different. If with the teacher who's berating these students, yes, he's gay. He's a teacher who is gay, at least from what I'm aware of the situation. I could be always wrong. If so, I apologize in advance. But there is the conversation of, if he was a bigger man, like if he was a bigger man instead of being slim, there is definitely and if he wasn't like viewed as conventionally attractive, there is the truth that comes out in which teachers would probably have him, like not even teachers, the people who are discussing him would probably have him out of a job because of the fact that the attractiveness of that teacher disappears. And if it's just a normal Joe Schmo quote looking person, then it's like, there's a lot of people who would not listen to you, or if they are actually seeing you, berate these students, they're like, they would hold you to the fire like they should with everybody. They would be like, what makes you think you should do this? And they would have him out the job. They would have him out quick. And with the teacher with the braids, what is it? The braids? If he wasn't conventionally attractive either, they probably would have had him out. We probably would have seen the video of him, the emo video of him. We would have seen that well before we did, and he probably would have been out of a job before the braids video even happened. So that's food for thought. That is all I have really for this topic. I wish I could. I would love to do some video essays talking about topics like this, because I would love. The thing about this podcast is it's purely my unedited, unfiltered thoughts. You can hear from the ums and the uhs, like I'm trying to pull this out from the top of my head and stuff like that too. While tuning into and like going through this content, stuff like that too. I would love to do some more video essays, possibly on this channel, talking about these different topics more in detail. And I've kind of did that before in previous eras. But if you would love to see visual content like video essays, or listen to it if you're listening to this on the podcast, let me know. I would love to do that. But let me know. But that is all from me. I'm the CakeDive, and I hope you love this episode of the Cake Radio Show. If you want to support, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Cake Radio Show, and drop a like, comment, subscribe, and tune into the previous episodes that I've had. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Apple Music, Spotify, whatever have you, be sure to follow and turn those notifications on for future episodes, and give us a good rating on those podcast platforms. And this has been the Cake Radio Show, a CakeDive ZCN Studios podcast. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.